Peaceful greetings and thank you for your interest in Appeal Incorporated and our initiative to launch a new credit union to facilitate economic empowerment for communities of people of African descent. This presentation will provide you with a comprehensive summary of the structure of Appeal with a focus on our credit union venture and will inform you as to how you can join or support the Appeal Empowerment Movement. Appeal is a venture facilitating economic empowerment and educational enrichment by conducting workshops in financial literacy and historical and cultural literacy, having a think tank to analyze and address important issues, and developing a full-service banking institution in the form of a credit union focused on serving and empowering communities of people of African descent locally, nationally, and globally. In short, it's about empowerment. Here is our appeal to you. We are going to move through each of our agenda items expeditiously, but with clarity, to give you the full scope of what this venture is all about. Among people of African descent, there are low levels of wealth and low levels of ownership of businesses that produce, distribute, and sell the many goods and services that our communities consume. The relatively high purchasing power of over $1 trillion annually for Black people in America is mostly not spent with Black-owned businesses or deposited in Black-owned banks. And thus these funds do not stay in our communities to build wealth or allow for us to provide employment opportunities for our communities. Moreover, Africa is the richest continent in the world in terms of mineral resources, but due to the history of exploitation, these resources have mostly not been used to build wealth and produce prosperity for communities of African people. These conditions result in economic weakness and related problems, including the lack of ability to be self-sufficient and empowered to ensure our future well-being. So what is the solution? Organizing funding for economic empowerment. More specifically, Appeal's development of a full-service banking institution in the form of a credit union to finance ownership and wealth creation for communities of people of African descent, along with our financial education programs, provide solutions to these problems. Appeal's workshops in financial literacy educate people about personal, family, and community financial management and economic empowerment. A key distinction between Appeal's planned credit union and other banking institutions is our focus on leveraging our community's deposits to A. Provide funding for land and business development that builds the capacity to own the production, distribution, and retailing of goods and services that Black communities consume, and produce employment and training opportunities, thus creating an economic infrastructure for our communities to build wealth and become empowered, self-sufficient, and prosperous. And B, provide funding for business ventures and projects that result in the increased utilization of Africa's mineral wealth for the benefit of African people and communities. Now, let me introduce myself and my professional background to you. My name is Lasana K. Mack, and I'm serving as Executive Director of Appeal. From 2005 to 2012, I served as City Treasurer of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., which involved managing the finance and treasury functions of an entity with a $10 billion annual operating budget. My responsibilities included cash management, payment operations, banking operations, debt management, investment management, budgeting, and accounting. This position provided some great experience in financial management and the process of financing infrastructure development for the building of communities. On behalf of the city, I was responsible for executing complex bond financing transactions in the financial marketplace, typically in the hundreds of millions of dollars per transaction, to provide funding for school buildings, office buildings, hospitals, arenas, and much more, working with some of the biggest banks and sharpest finance professionals in this country. and did so successfully for many years. The point of me sharing this with you is that we want you to know that our management team is well qualified to manage this important endeavor, and that this kind of experience and knowledge has been and is being employed to design the structure and the vision for Appeal as a vehicle to facilitate the financing of infrastructure development and economic empowerment for our communities. Here you see our management team. Each of these individuals has a wealth of experience and knowledge that makes them well qualified and valuable members of the Appeal team. On our website, under the tab About Appeal, you will find bios for each of the members of our management team. So what is the definition and mission of Appeal? Appeal is an acronym for Association of People for Pan-Africanist Economic Advancement Through Leverage. So what does that mean? Well, the term Pan-Africanist is derived from the concept of Pan-Africanism, which represents the perspective that people of African descent, i.e. Black people or African people, in America, in Africa, and around the world represent a broad ethnic group and a broad extended family with a common African-based heritage, and that it is important for this extended family to take certain unified and collective actions to improve our plight in our communities, locally, nationally, and internationally, in terms of economic, political, social, cultural, and educational status and conditions. Leverage is a physics term and a finance term that conveys utilizing a pivotal device, utilizing a strategic advantage, or utilizing credit strategically in order to produce favorable or enhanced outcomes. So, combining these two terms with a focus on economic advancement defines Appeal and produces the mission of Appeal, which is to organize and strategically utilize the vast resources of people of African descent, locally, nationally, and globally, to facilitate economic empowerment and educational enrichment to produce strong, self-sufficient, and prosperous communities. Every credit union that is federally chartered must have a name that ends in the words Federal Credit Union. And the name of the credit union that we are in the process of creating for the benefit of Appeal's members will be Appeal Federal Credit Union, or AFCU. AFCU plans to begin as an online-only credit union, accessible to Appeal members wherever they may be located, with state-of-the-art online operations. We intend to open physical branches in various locations over time, starting with Washington, D.C., where Appeal is based. However, we want to stress that AFCU will, from its inception, be accessible and fully functional online for Appeal members all over, locally, nationally, and internationally. Unlike banks, credit unions are owned jointly by all members, and thus are not operated to generate a profit for a relatively small ownership or shareholder group, as banks are. Appeal's credit union will utilize all of its resources to efficiently provide financial services and products to its members at relatively favorable rates. All profits will be reinvested in the credit union for the benefit of members or distributed to members in the form of dividends. This represents a major difference between community-based financial institutions and the big banks. Evidence has shown that the recent subprime mortgage and foreclosure crisis caused significant economic damage and led to billions in lost wealth, and Black communities were the hardest hit, while Wall Street banks were making huge profits generated by some unsavory practices. There is a broad-based movement to withdraw support from big banks and move money into local and community-based financial institutions that provide more advantageous financial services and a better opportunity for people and communities to control their financial and economic futures. Appeal's creation of a credit union is consistent with that dynamic. AFCU will be established based on an associational common bond, meaning that members of Appeal Incorporated, our nonprofit association, will have the benefit of being eligible to become members of the Appeal Credit Union. It will be a full-service credit union, a financial institution offering a complete array of banking services and products similar to a typical bank. It will be a first-class, state-of-the-art financial institution. This slide shows the various services that Appeal's Credit Union intends to provide, including checking and savings accounts, credit and debit cards, investment vehicles, and personal and business loans. As we stated earlier, a key distinction between Appeal's planned credit union and other banking institutions is our focus on leveraging our community's deposits to A. Provide funding for land and business development that builds the capacity to own the production, distribution, and retailing of goods and services that Black communities consume, and produce employment and training opportunities, thus creating an economic infrastructure for Black communities to build wealth and become empowered, self-sufficient, and prosperous. And B, provide funding for business ventures and projects that result in the increased utilization of Africa's mineral wealth for the benefit of African people and communities. Now let's review the requirements for Appeal membership and the requirements for membership in Appeal's forthcoming credit union. Becoming an Appeal member is simple and straightforward with 3 requirements. One must make an initial annual dues payment of $50, sign our member commitment form pledging support for Appeal's mission, and be approved for membership by Appeal's Board of Directors. Becoming a member of the Appeal Credit Union simply requires being an Appeal member in good standing, making an initial deposit, and completing the other basic steps necessary to open an account in the credit union when it comes into fruition. Now let's discuss the allocation and handling of funds, which takes us to the heart of the matter in terms of building the financial enterprise and getting you on board. The total amount requested from new members is only $150, which has 3 components: $50 for Appeal membership dues, $50 for the Appeal Credit Union Startup Costs Fund, and $50 as an advance deposit for your Appeal Credit Union account. The membership dues are used to support the operating expenses associated with Appeal's program activities, primarily the financial literacy programs, the historical and cultural literacy programs, and the think tank activities. The Credit Union Startup Cost Fund is to provide for preliminary and first-year operating expenses, such as computer system hardware and banking software. The advance deposit for your credit union account strengthens Appeal's credit union charter application by demonstrating that we already have a base of depositors and deposits, and means that you are already a step ahead in opening your account in the credit union when it comes into being. All funds contributed or deposited towards Appeal's credit union, which is all funds in categories B and C on this slide, will be held in escrow until Appeal's application for a credit union charter is approved, meaning that these funds can only be used for their designated purposes and cannot be withdrawn for any purpose prior to our credit union charter approval. Slide 27, which we will get to shortly, provides more detailed information on the handling of these funds. So again, $150 is the total that we are requesting from you as a prospective new member of Appeal. We intentionally made this amount very reasonable and affordable for most people, and we appeal to you to help empower yourself and your community by joining and supporting Appeal's empowerment movement. We are building a financial and economic foundation to leverage the vast resources of people of African descent to produce strong, self-sufficient, and prosperous communities. You can sign up for membership now through our website at www.appealinc.org. That's appealinc.org. Next, we will briefly discuss contributions to Appeal that are separate from the amounts requested from new members that we just covered on the previous slide. Appeal is a nonprofit organization, and donations to Appeal to support our operations, and/or for our credit union project shall become tax-deductible retroactively if and when appeals pending application for 501c3 tax-exempt status is approved, which is expected in tax year 2013. We cannot guarantee that our tax-exempt status will be approved, but this is our expectation based on meeting the stated requirements. This slide shows our premium contribution levels from the Garvey support level of $100,000 down to the Nkrumah support level of $1,000 and all levels in between. Contributors at these levels will receive premium gifts in the form of a framed classic photo or portrait of the historical figure identified with your support level and all those at lower support levels. However, you may donate whatever amount you are inspired and able to contribute. No amount is too small or too large. You can donate now through our website in whatever amount you desire, and you can designate your donation to support Appeal's Credit Union Fund and/or our Operations Fund. We thank you in advance for your support. As we move towards the conclusion of this presentation, we want to briefly review our membership and funding requirements, targets, and sources. To demonstrate viability of our credit union venture to the Federal Chartering Agency, we need a minimum of 3,000 members. Given the many people of African descent, locally, nationally, and globally, who understand the value and potential in our mission and our planned credit union, we think that our membership goals are very achievable and that ultimately our membership numbers will be much higher than this. But every single new member is important to help us reach our goals and fulfill our mission, and we want you to become our next new member and invite your circle of family, friends, and associates to become Appeal members as well. Regarding our funding, the minimum funding needs are $100,000 for our operating budget and $500,000 for our credit union startup cost fund. Our targets are $1 million in each of our three funding categories, which are our operations fund, our credit union startup cost fund, and our credit union advanced deposits fund. Ultimately, we project Appeal and its credit union being a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, which will allow us to accomplish our objective of facilitating large-scale improvement in the socio-economic conditions of people of African descent. Achieving our membership targets will provide for a substantial amount of the funding requirements. Additional contributions will facilitate the rest. As stated earlier, Black people in America alone have a collective purchasing power of approximately $1 trillion annually, and ultimately, widespread support from those who see the value in our mission is expected to result in Appeal being a powerful and empowering multi-billion-dollar enterprise for our communities. Here you see our time frames, culminating in the projected opening of the Appeal Credit Union. This slide contains deposit disclosure information that pertains to the funds that will be contributed and deposited towards the credit union project. You are encouraged to read it in its entirety. Essentially, the disclosure states that all funds deposited or contributed towards the credit union project will be held in escrow, meaning that they cannot and will not be used for any purpose other than for the credit union, that they cannot and will not be withdrawn or used prior to approval of Appeal's application for a credit union charter, and that if, for any reason, Appeal's credit union does not come into fruition, these monies will be refunded with interest. It also states that these funds will be deposited in interest-bearing accounts in conservative financial instruments, and as such, we do not expect any loss of principal on any such deposits. The bottom line regarding our funds management is that we are handling all Appeal funds prudently and wisely, and we have the experience, expertise, and integrity to do it well and do it right. Here is our contact information. We look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to you joining and/or supporting Appeal. On behalf of the entire Appeal team, I thank you for your time and your interest, and thank you in advance for your support for Appeal. This is a serious endeavor, a very important endeavor, and it's about empowerment. Together, we will succeed.